Welcome to Biography Vault, your ultimate destination for captivating and inspiring stories of remarkable individuals throughout history. From world leaders to pioneers, artists to innovators, we bring their journeys to life in every video. Join us as we unlock the secrets, challenges, and triumphs of the most influential figures who shaped our world. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss a new biography.
Okay, so we've got a pretty fascinating deep dive ahead of us today.
Yeah, looks like it.
You sent over some really interesting material about Sir Isaac Newton.
Right.
This guy was a total titan in the scientific world.
Yeah.
Lived a good long life, too, from 1643 to 1727.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an English mathematician, physicist, astronomer, and author.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a resume.
And there's no exaggeration to say his work completely changed the way we understand the universe.
For sure.
Think of him as like laying the foundation for what we know as classical mechanics.
Yeah.
And really, so much of modern science stems from his work.
I think that's right on. You know, when you talk about people who really, really changed the way humans think,
Yeah.
Newton's right up there at the top.
He's got to be in that conversation.
So what we're going to do in this deep dive is really try to extract the core parts of his life and all his revolutionary contributions.
Yeah.
And hopefully give you a clear, insightful understanding of his lasting influence without getting too bogged down, you know?
Nope. Keep it nice and tight.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's jump right into it.
Sounds good.
Looks like Isaac Newton was born on January 4th, 1643.
Mm-hmm.
But that's according to the old style calendar.
Oh, right.
It's interesting. Your sources point out that by the Julian calendar, which was used back then, his birth date would have actually been December 25th, 1642.
Oh, Christmas Day.
A little calendar quirk right off the bat.
Yeah, kind of neat how even the way we record his birth kind of reflects these shifts and how we keep time, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, he was born in Woolsthorpe, Lincolnshire, England.
Okay.
And sadly, his father, who was also named Isaac Newton, died just 3 months before he was born.
Oh, wow. That's tough.
Yeah.
So his early life had another kind of tough turn, too, didn't it?
Right.
When he was only 3 years old, his mother, Hannah Eiskopf, remarried.
Uh-huh.
And because of that, he was raised by his maternal grandmother.
Right.
I mean, you can't help but wonder how these early experiences might have shaped him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like the backdrop to his whole development, you know?
Oh.
You think about how intensely focused he became later in life.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a connection there. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, your sources mentioned he got his early education at the King's School in Grantham.
Okay.
And it was there that he really started to show this aptitude for mathematics and mechanics.
So you're saying those sparks of brilliance were kind of there from the beginning?
Seems that way.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that clear talent led him to Trinity College, Cambridge in 1661.
Okay.
And the material you shared talks about how he studied a whole range of things there.
Yeah.
Math, what they called natural philosophy back then, which we now call physics.
Right.
And astronomy.
Like, I wonder what it would have been like to be in his shoes.
Yeah.
Like encountering these like huge ideas for the first time.
Totally. And it's important to remember, you know, he wasn't working in a vacuum.
Yeah.
I mean, he was exposed to the ideas of people like Rene Descartes and Galileo.
Sure. Groundbreaking stuff.
Exactly. So if you zoom out a little, you can see how scientific understanding was building and building.
Yeah.
And Newton was really entering this environment that was just like charged with these revolutionary concepts.
So this is where things start to really pick up speed, huh?
It seems that way.
The mid-1660s were crucial for Newton.
Yeah.
This is when he really started laying the groundwork for his theories on light motion and gravity.
Exactly. And those theories would become the foundation for his later discoveries.
Yeah, for everything he's known for.
What's really striking is just the sheer amount of intellectual activity he was doing.
He was on fire.
Right then, around 1665, something happened that in a weird way really helped his work.
Okay, what happened?
The University of Cambridge had to temporarily close because of the plague.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what did he do?
He went back to his family home in Woolsthorpe.
Okay.
And during this time when he was kind of isolated, you know, he had this incredible burst of creative thinking.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
That this awful event ended up creating the space for these major scientific breakthroughs.
It is. I mean, it was during this time that he started developing his theory of calculus.
Okay.
Calculus.
Now, I know some people out there might not have the fondest memories of calculus from school.
I get it.
But basically, it's a branch of math that deals with continuous change.
Okay.
And your sources point out that he published his work on calculus later.
Right.
But the core ideas were really coming together during this period.
I see.
And this is where we get into another interesting point.
Okay.
The fact that Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz also developed calculus independently.
Oh, really? So two people came up with it at the same time?
Basically, yeah. And the sources you gave me talk about the controversy surrounding this.
Oh, I bet.
It wasn't just a simple case of one person inventing it. You know?
All right.
There were a lot of arguments about who did it first and who should get the credit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This whole thing really highlights how sometimes progress in science can happen in these parallel ways.
So people working totally independently come up with the same idea.
Okay, well, let's move on to what are probably Newton's most famous contributions.
It's good.
His 3 laws of motion and the theory of universal gravitation.
Right now we're getting to the big stuff.
His book, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, usually it's called Principia, published in 1687, was a total game changer.
Total change physics.
It was like a turning point in the history of science.
Absolutely.
So in the Principia, he laid out these 3 fundamental laws that describe how objects move.
Right. And the first one, often called the law of inertia, says that an object at rest will stay at rest.
Yeah.
And an object in motion will stay in motion at the same speed and in the same direction, unless some outside force acts on it.
So like if I throw a ball, it's going to keep going.
Well, until something stops it, like gravity or air resistance.
Right, of course.
And this might seem obvious now.
Yeah, it does.
But back then, it was a really new idea.
Interesting.
Before Newton, people thought that you needed to constantly apply a force to keep something moving.
I guess that makes sense in a way.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about pushing a box across the floor, you got to keep pushing to keep it going.
Exactly.
But Newton showed that a constant state of motion doesn't actually need a continuous force.
The force is just to get it going?
Right.
And then to change its motion.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
So that's the first law.
Okay, what's the second?
The second law is the law of acceleration. And it's famously expressed as F equals ma.
I've definitely heard that before.
Force equals mass times acceleration.
Right.
This gives us a precise mathematical relationship between how much force is applied to an object, the object's mass, and how much its motion will change.
Okay, so this is like if I hit a tennis ball with a lot of force, it's going to accelerate more than if I just kind of tap it.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this law is a really fundamental tool for understanding and predicting how things move. And then we have the third law, the law of action and reaction.
Okay, I think I remember this one.
It says that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Okay, like when you jump up, you're pushing down on the ground.
Exactly. And the ground is pushing back up on you with the same amount of force.
Okay, cool.
That's what propels you upward.
Right.
So these 3 laws together give us this complete framework for understanding how objects interact and move.
Okay, so that's how things move. But what about gravity?
Well, that's where his theory of universal gravitation comes in.
Right, that was also in the Principia.
Exactly. He didn't stop at just the laws of motion.
He was on a roll.
Right. So this theory is the idea that every object in the universe with mass attracts every other object with mass.
Okay.
And the strength of that attraction depends on 2 things.
Okay.
First, the product of their masses.
So bigger objects have a stronger pull.
Exactly. And second, the distance between them.
Okay, the farther apart, the greater the pull.
Right.
So like the Earth pulls on us much more strongly. Then it pulls on like a distant star.
Exactly. And what's really revolutionary about this idea is that it explained both how planets orbit the sun and everyday things like why things fall to the ground.
It all comes back to gravity.
Exactly. One law to rule them all.
So he basically unified our understanding of like the entire cosmos and our everyday lives here on Earth.
It was a totally new way of looking at the universe.
Okay, so we've covered motion and gravity.
Right.
What else did this guy do?
Well, he also made some huge contributions to the field of optics.
Okay, so light.
Right around the 1670s, he started doing these really interesting experiments with prisms.
Okay, prisms, those things that split light into rainbows.
Exactly. And those experiments totally changed our understanding of what light is.
Okay.
So what Newton discovered was that when you shine white light through a prism, it doesn't just get bent. It actually separates into all the colors of the rainbow.
The whole spectrum.
Right. And this was a big deal because back then, people thought that color was just some kind of modification of white light.
Like white light was the pure form.
Yeah, they thought white light was the basic thing, and that colors were somehow added to it.
Right.
But Newton showed that white light isn't actually the basic thing at all.
Really?
It's actually made up of all these different colors.
Okay.
And the prism is just separating them out.
So the colors are already there in the white light.
Exactly. This completely changed how we think about light and color.
So it's not that the prism is adding the colors.
Yep.
They're already there.
It's just revealing them.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
And his work on optics didn't stop there.
Okay.
In 1704, he published his book Optics.
Okay, another book.
Where he went even deeper into his ideas on light color and refraction.
Refraction. That's like how light bends when it goes from one medium to another.
Right, like from air to water.
Exactly.
And this work was so important.
Okay.
Because it laid the groundwork for later developments, like the wave theory of light.
And the whole field of spectroscopy.
Spectroscopy, that's how we analyze light to understand the properties of matter.
Exactly. So you could see that Newton's work in optics had a huge impact.
Yeah, way beyond just how we see things.
Right.
It's crazy how much this guy did. I mean...
Yeah, he was incredibly curious and productive.
He didn't just stick to one thing.
Nope. He explored all sorts of areas.
And in his later years, he even got involved in public life.
Right.
Like in 1696, he was appointed Warden of the Royal Mint. Which, you know, might seem kind of far removed from theoretical science.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily think of that as a scientist's job.
But he actually played a key role in reforming England's currency.
Oh, really?
And fighting counterfeiting.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, your sources make it clear that he was very successful in this role and earned a lot of respect for his efforts.
So he was a practical guy, too.
Seems like he could apply his intelligence to all kinds of problems.
And then in 1703, he was elected president of the Royal Society. Oh, wow.
Which was and still is like the top scientific organization in England.
Yeah.
And he held that position until he died.
That's a huge honor.
It really shows how highly regarded he was by his peers.
Yeah, for sure.
And the recognition just kept coming.
What do you mean?
In 1705, Queen Anne knighted him.
So he became Sir Isaac Newton.
Exactly, a clear sign of his massive contributions to the nation and to knowledge in general.
Yeah, it's hard to overstate his impact.
Sadly, though, his health started to decline in the early 1720s.
Oh.
And he died on March 31st, 1727 at the age of 84.
Okay.
And he was buried in Westminster Abbey.
Oh, wow.
You know, among royalty and national heroes.
So that's like the ultimate sign of respect.
It really is a powerful symbol of how important he was to society and culture.
And as we've seen throughout this deep dive, his scientific work remained basically unchallenged for centuries.
Yeah, it was that solid.
His laws of motion and gravitation formed the basis of classical physics.
Right.
Until the 20th century, when all these new ideas came along.
Things like Einstein's theory of relativity and quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
But even with all that, his book, Principia, is still considered one of the most influential scientific works ever written.
Really a classic.
Absolutely a cornerstone.
Okay, so just to kind of sum up.
Sure.
Newton's influence on science and engineering is impossible to measure.
I agree. I mean, his laws gave us the tools to understand motion.
Yeah.
Everywhere, you know.
From a baseball flying through the air to planets orbiting stars.
Exactly.
And even today, so many advancements in engineering and technology are based on his principle.
It all comes back to Newton.
And it wasn't just physics.
Right.
His work on calculus became this fundamental part of modern math.
Absolutely essential for so many fields.
And he also made significant contributions to algebra and geometry.
Right. He was a true polymath.
He did it all.
And if we look at the bigger picture, we can see how Newton's work laid the foundation for other great mathematicians. People like Pierre-Simon Laplace, Joseph Fourier, and Carl Friedrich Gauss.
So his influence just kept rippling out.
Exactly. He inspired generations of thinkers.
And really shaped the course of math and science.
I think that's a great way to put it.
So what's the takeaway here for our listeners?
Well, I think the main thing is that Newton's legacy is still incredibly important and relevant today.
Yeah, he's considered one of the most influential scientists ever.
And for good reason.
And it's not just his specific discoveries.
Right.
It's also his way of thinking, you know?
Yeah.
His ability to synthesize these complex ideas and explain them clearly and elegantly.
He had such a clear vision.
He completely transformed the way we do science.
And if we put his work in the context of history, we see that he was a key figure in the Enlightenment.
Right, the Enlightenment.
This period where reason and empirical observations...
So like relying on evidence from the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was huge during the Enlightenment.
Okay.
And Newton was right at the forefront of that.
So even though our understanding of the universe has evolved...
Right, with modern physics and all that.
His principles are still essential.
They're like the bedrock of our scientific understanding.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive into the life and work of Sir Isaac Newton,
right,
we've covered his revolutionary contributions to math, physics, and astronomy.
We've seen how he developed calculus,
formulated the laws of motion and universal gravitation,
and made groundbreaking discoveries about light.
And his impact on how we understand the universe is just enormous.
It really is. I mean, it makes you wonder,
yeah,
how do we even begin to measure the influence of someone like that?
And that leads us to a final thought for our listeners.
Okay, I like this part.
In a time when science is becoming more and more specialized.
Yeah, where people focus on these really narrow areas.
Newton's ability to connect different fields. Is that still a valuable model for us today?
That's a great question. I mean, his work shows us that scientific disciplines are all connected. And that maybe we can achieve these really profound insights if we aim for a more unified understanding of the natural world.
Like a more holistic approach.
Exactly.
I think that's a great place to leave it.
I agree. Food for thought.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time.
See you then.